So this is my weekend thrift store $12 find, and I just thought it would be a good topic for a video because I was just so impressed by how beautiful it is as a tool, and I feel like modern tools have really lost the capacity to place aesthetics in like a priority sort of role. Um, Although there's a lot more to talk about with this, but I wanted to show you, like, here's my most modern electronic driver, and it definitely has an aesthetic, and I've done a really long video discussing these Craftsman Nextech electronic drivers, but I don't know. This is a hard video to make because there's so many different ways I could sort of enter into the topic that I really want to discuss. But first I wanted to talk about like mechanical versus non-mechanical, or sorry, I don't know, maybe you'd say manual versus automatic, or electronic versus hand powered, I guess would maybe be the best terminology. So like in the 21st century, when electricity is pretty much ever present and it's such a big driving factor of our lives, and like everything's digital now, like even beyond purely electronic, like there's a whole nother layer of reality sort of imbued by electrons. Like, who's gonna pick up a book anymore when you can just talk to your phone and say, like, hey Google or whatever, and get a lookup in just a few seconds that'll tell you what you need to know. And looking through a book, and finding the correct index and then going to the right page and reading an article can take a lot longer. And it's the same with like hand tools. It's like with this electric driver, the battery's charged, I just pick it up, I pull the trigger, and this even has a variable speed trigger. Like, it's not many steps, but it allows for a reasonable level of fine-tuning control. While this, on the other hand, and this is something I definitely wanted to talk about in the video because it's a crucial factor, like, this allows for what I consider almost the ultimate level of fine-grained motor control. That's kind of funny, like, pun not intended, but your ability to control the spinning of the drill or whatever you put in that little chuck. And this is actually kind of nice. It's got a really high quality chuck. In fact, that was sort of the deciding factor when I purchased this. Let's see, I don't know. Damn, my calipers are... Just bear with me here while I get my calipers out, because I am kind of curious to see what the actual size of this chuck is. Okay, so... Okay, so that's, I can't read it through the camera. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 millimeters. So it's, and that's an interesting thing about this tool. It's metric. It doesn't have a maker's mark on it anywhere. No brand name of any kind that I could find. So who knows about its origin? But I think it's probably European, just due to the color scheme. Maybe somebody out there who might recognize it could identify it. But it has a really high quality chuck, 9 millimeter. Like, look at how tightly these come together. It's clearly that clear that when they designed this, they were really thinking about the precision. Come on, focus. Like the precision use of this as a hand tool for drilling really tiny holes. And I put this really small, like millimeter drill bit into the chuck. Sorry, this is hard to do with one hand. But yeah, this is the first hand tool that I've actually ever owned for drilling. I have a Japanese handsaw that I use quite extensively, but I've never actually used a hand drill before. And I found it really satisfying, like just the process of drilling using the mechanical force instead of like a battery powered drill. A lot of control. The one downside I will say is that it tends to wobble a little bit because your hand is turning the crank, and that puts force on the sort of shank of the drill as you're drilling, which can cause the bit to wobble just a bit, which is something that with an electric drill you don't have quite as much trouble with. But the trade-off is that you're able to control the speed with an unparalleled level of precision. Like I can make it really fast. Of course, if I'm going really fast and it's not actually pushed into a workpiece, it's going to get way out of hand and wobble all over the place and screw up the hole. So there's a lot of considerations. So yeah, I don't know. I'm starting to think like I'm not even sure really exactly where I wanted to go with this video, but that was one thing that I wanted to sort of just talk about. And then the second part was the aesthetics, because like when I first saw this in the thrift shop, I was just like, I don't need a hand drill, but I wanted a hand drill for quite a while, and it just jumped out at me because of like the bright, cheerful, happy colors, like the saturated red, the saturated blue, like the sort of dark, almost black of the chuck, and then like the silvery, dull silver of the these gears, the sort of like yellow wood of the handle and little knob here. And it was just like, I was like, wow, that's like something out of Santa's workshop. It's just so cheerful and aesthetic, and it's like a tool that you would actually sort of have pleasure in the use of. Just every time you pick it up or look at it, it's a pleasure. And I really wish that these kind of aesthetics or bright, cheerful, saturated colors were more of a part of modern tool design. And in terms of the topology or like the engineering, the structural design is also really remarkable and beautiful, and it's like minimalism, and yet it's exactly kind of what it needs to be in order to be strong and aesthetically pleasing. Like I really love this sharp curvature on the gearbox, I guess you would call this, although it's not really a box. And you'll notice the gears are rotating in opposite directions. So this is the only gear that's actually driving the drill. This gear is just like for balance, or to keep the mechanism stable while you're turning. They could improve that stability considerably by duplicating this over here and making a cross and having 4 of these, or making it a tri shape, like the tri corrugation reinforcement down here in the aluminum, the main gear. I think this is called a planetary gear system, but I'm not sure. I don't really have all my terminology for mechanics down. When I got this, it was clear that at some point the original shaft and like fastening mechanism here that held the main gear into the tool had been lost or broken at some point, and it had been replaced with this bolt and lock nut. And this was a metric M8 8mm with the smooth shank that was like 20 something millimeters of clear threadless shaft, which wasn't quite long enough for the entirety of this whole mechanism. So I replaced that bolt with another M8 that was I forgot what they call these, but it's got like a little extra support here. And then I put a couple of nylon washers in place there to just give it a little bit more of a smoother operation. Interestingly enough, when whoever replaced the shaft put it back together, they put it together backwards, and they had the main gear wheel on this side, and I think it's supposed to be positioned like this. Putting another really thin nylon washer in between there would improve the action of the mechanism a little bit. If this tool was more higher end, a slightly higher end version, it would use bearings probably for all the, like these two gears and then the main shaft, to give it an even smoother operation. But honestly, just as a purely like friction based shaft through a hole without any bearings at all, it's got a fairly smooth operation. I like the fact that it spins a little, but it doesn't like just keep spinning unless you give it quite a bit of energy force. So I think that's more or less ideal for manual drilling. So yeah, what else? Oh yeah, there was one last thing I just wanted to talk about, and that's like, say you're out on a job and you don't have power, the grid goes down, all your batteries are dead. Then what do? Like, you need to drill a hole. There's no easy way to do it. So that's the utility and beauty of a hand drill like this. Aside from that, it's pretty much useless, right? It's just a wall hanger. But I personally think it's kind of cool to have one of these around just in case. And even though this is a 9mm chuck here that can only support so many sizes of accessories, it's possible to take a standard quarter-inch chuck and put it into the 9mm, and I think this is a 10mm, which is kind of ridiculous. It just gives you one more millimeter of capacity for larger bits and stuff. But you could get a 2cm chuck that had a quarter-inch shaft, and then magically you have a larger capacity for bigger drills and a little more weight too, which gives you a little more inertia for hand drilling, which is nice to have the inertia, the centrifugal force, like the flywheel action for hand drilling. So yeah, anyway, $12 at the local thrift shop, and I was totally thrilled. I just think this is so cool. I've wanted one of these for so long. So yeah, I don't know if you have any thoughts about this kind of thing. I'd love to here's what you have to say, in the comments or whatever. It's an interesting topic to think about, hand versus mechanical tools and aesthetics in tools, emphasizing beauty along with functionality. Which reminds me, I have one other thing that kind of falls into this category, which I also picked up at a thrift shop, and I just think is so cool. This is a Union Tool Company combination square, like, I forgot what they call this. This part's called the blade, and then this thing also has a name. But I just thought aesthetically, it was so attractive compared to most of the modern combination square parts that you find if you just bought like a Stanley off the shelf. And it even had the scribe like still in it, which I thought was so cool. My camera's not really able to focus because I'm using a mobile phone. But yeah, the level wasn't cracked. Really a nice piece. It just had a beautiful aesthetic to it, not just structurally, but just in terms of like the curves and the forms and stuff. And I had to buy this blade separately, which I got like in an aftermarket remnant sale with the brand name scratched off. But yeah, anyway, so cool. I mean, like, they kind of go together, don't they? Like, there's a similarity in the aesthetics and the beauty. There's sort of this 19th century or 20th century aesthetic with the painted what is that, not lacquer, but not varnish, enamel, like the enamel that they put on the metal. This is like a special kind of technology that was really popular for a while. I don't know how, I suppose I could look this up, but they actually like use some sort of chemistry to get the enamel to stick to the metal and form this like pattern, which is really like aesthetically pleasing. So yeah, anyway, that's about all I had to say for this video. Like 16 and a half minutes, pretty crazy. But yeah, anyway, leave your thoughts down below if you have any, and thanks for watching.